the wilderness of Varner 9 was teeming with life in ways that few could ever comprehend. Thick vegetation sprawled endlessly in all directions, veiled in a perpetual shroud of mist so dense it seemed to stifle any hint of sunlight. The air was saturated with moisture, soaking every leaf and branch, while the canopy above, a living fortress of tangled limbs and tendrils, formed a world below that was dim, damp, and relentless. The atmosphere was filled with the sounds of life, a discordant symphony of rustling foliage, the skittering of unseen creatures, and the occasional eerie cries of alien predators reverberating through the fog. This was not a place for flourishing, it was a place for survival. In this realm, nature did not nurture, it hunted. The jungle acted both as a trap and a predator, never offering protection. Every vine, every shadow, seemed prepared to strike. Above this sea of danger and deceit, a formidable alien vessel shattered the uneasy rhythm of the jungle, descending through the canopy in a defiant show of strength. From its underbelly emerged the Galactic Stalkers, a faction of elite alien hunters who sought trophies from the most perilous planets. These towering, muscular beings moved with a self-assurance earned from countless successful hunts across the cosmos. "The humans call this place dangerous," one scoffed, his voice dripping with contempt. "Pathetic. This is no more than a neglected garden." Their leader, Derek, sneered as his warriors spread out into the jungle. "Primitive world, primitive fears. Their warnings mean nothing to us." High above, concealed within the dense foliage of the canopy, a figure crouched silently, rifle cradled in gloved hands. Through his scope, Sergeant Nathan Cole observed the haughty aliens with cold detachment. "Let them mock," Nathan murmured, his voice low and lethal. "Their arrogance will be their undoing." The Galactic Stalkers moved with deliberate intent, their massive figures cutting through the thick undergrowth of Varner IX's jungle. They were titans, clad in sleek, high-tech armor designed to endure even the harshest of conditions. Each bore the marks of innumerable hunts, scars carved into their armor, bones from defeated prey adorning their bodies like grisly trophies. At the front, Derek led, a towering figure with deep scarlet skin, a helmet crowned with sharp spines. His belt was decorated with skulls, trophies taken from various sentient species he had bested across the galaxy. Behind him, Fallon, the lean tracker, prowled with methodical precision. His keen eyes scanned the ground for signs of movement, though his predatory instincts often surpassed his need for technology. At the rear, Zarkin lumbered along, a massive energy cannon resting across his shoulder. Loud and boisterous, he was the enforcer, the one who crushed anything daring to challenge their hunting party. "What prey?" Zarkin barked as his boot crushed a colorful, harmless alien insect. "Nothing in this jungle could challenge us. This is no hunt, it's a stroll." Fallon chuckled. "Let them flee if they wish. We'll track their fear." Derek smirked, his voice gravelly. "The humans speak boldly about this jungle. Yet all I see are cowards hiding behind leaves." Their arrogance, however, was short-lived. As they ventured deeper, the jungle began to retaliate, though subtly at first. Razor-toothed predators, disturbed by the intrusion, leapt at the stalkers from the shadows. Venomous insects, their stings as deadly as energy blasts, swarmed the invaders. Yet, the alien hunters hardly broke a sweat, swatting and stomping as their shields and advanced weapons reduced even the fiercest attackers to little more than smoldering corpses. "They call this a challenge?" Zarkin laughed, blasting a charging beast into pieces. "Pathetic." Derek growled approvingly but cast a wary glance around. Despite their firepower, the jungle's presence seemed to press against them. The dense mist and constant sounds of unseen creatures created a pervasive unease, even for seasoned killers like them. High above in the canopy, Nathan Cole observed the unfolding scene through his rifle scope. His expression remained calm but cold, each movement a calculated step toward his goal. Nathan was no ordinary soldier, he was humanity's finest sharpshooter, left behind as a solitary sentry to deter any would-be intruders during the evacuation. For him, the jungle was not just a battleground, it was home. Every vine, every shadow, and every call of its wildlife was an extension of himself. They thought the jungle was their only enemy, Nathan muttered, sighting his target through the fog. A grave error. The first strike came suddenly, nearly invisible. From the treetops, Nathan's rifle unleashed a suppressed shot. The projectile cut through the air, striking Zarkin directly through the exposed gap in his armor. The massive gunner staggered, confusion flashing across his face before he collapsed into the underbrush. A bird's distant cry blended with the shot, perfectly masking its source. Derek and Fallon whirled around, weapons raised, but there was nothing to see, just fog, shadows, and jungle. Zarkin! Derek barked, kneeling beside his fallen comrade. Blood pooled beneath him, the fatal wound ending his life almost immediately. Where is he? Fallon snarled, activating a tracking device. His equipment whirred, struggling to isolate any movement. But the readings were erratic, overwhelmed by the abundant life of the jungle. Hold position. Derek commanded, his voice firm despite the unease creeping into his expression. Above, Nathan shifted position, already preparing his next shot. The jungle fell silent. To the remaining stalkers, the quiet was more unsettling than any sound. Nathan's voice crackled through the communicator, stolen from a previous hunt. You should have stayed away from this world, he whispered, each word laced with menace. Coward! Derek roared, but even he could not mask the tension now gripping the group. For the first time, the hunters began to feel like prey. Nathan Cole's shadowy form moved silently through the thick jungle canopy. He moved like a ghost, the terrain an extension of his will. Where the galactic stalkers relied on arrogance and firepower, Nathan used cunning, patience, and a jungle that seemed to cooperate with him. The fog thickened, enveloping the forest floor and further disorienting the alien hunters. Nathan's voice echoed softly through the stolen stalker communicator, a low, taunting whisper. You don't belong here. The jungle doesn't forgive trespassers. Nathan's intimate knowledge of the terrain gave him complete control. He set traps using the jungle's natural hazards, vines woven into trip lines that triggered bursts of toxic spores from dangerous plants, and clusters of stones arranged to create false trails. Animal calls, perfectly mimicked by small sonic emitters he'd created, lured the hunters off course, splintering their cohesion. As the stalkers trekked through the hostile underbrush, Nathan monitored them with detached precision. Fallon growled as a cluster of vines snagged his leg, halting his progress briefly. With a sharp tug, he freed himself, only to startle as an eerie bird call echoed nearby, too loud and too close to be natural. Stay alert. Derek barked, his tone harsher now. This isn't a creature. This is strategy. Fallon clenched his claws into fists. Let him come to us. No humankin, he froze mid-sentence as the ground beneath him collapsed. With a roar, he plunged into a hidden pit, writhing in agony as venomous, iridescent insects swarmed his body. The sting of their bites pierced even his advanced armor. Struggling to escape, he staggered back toward his comrades, his skin marred by swollen wounds. Nathan's voice crackled in his ear. Your skull won't even make a decent trophy. The stalkers turned toward the sound of Fallon's ragged breathing, now marked by labored wheezing. Paranoia took root as the hunters realized they were not only outmatched but also in unfamiliar terrain. Shadows in the mist transformed into phantoms, and every sound became a potential threat. Derek attempted to regain control over his team, barking commands and urging them to focus. Stay in formation. Do not act impulsively, he warned. But despite his orders, the jungle worked against them. Small darts laced with neurotoxins, crafted from sharp thorns by Nathan, sliced through the air, grazing Zarkin's replacement gunner. While not lethal, the toxin induced hallucinations, causing the hunter to flail wildly at imagined predators. Derek growled and slammed the hunter against a tree. Get a grip, fool. Derek had had enough of the games. He activated a squadron of drones from his armor. Each drone ascended into the air on silent repulsor lifts, scanning the jungle with thermal imaging. They sliced through the fog, identifying heat signatures amid the teeming wildlife. Find him and flush him out. Derek ordered. Nathan, observing the drones spread throughout the jungle, remained calm. Suppressed shots cracked through the fog as he dismantled the drones one by one, each aimed precisely at their exposed power cores. As the last drone fell, Derek slammed his fist into a nearby tree. "Fallon, report!" Derek shouted. Fallon had ventured ahead on his own, picking up a faint thermal trace in the distance. As he approached, he saw the source, a humanoid figure crouched beside a log. With a predator's grin, he raised his weapon and fired. The figure vanished, the heat signature merely a decoy set by Nathan. As Fallon moved closer, the log's end flared, erupting with the force of a plasma grenade rigged inside. The explosion hurled him backward, breaking his visor and tearing through his armor. Gasping and bleeding, Fallon staggered deeper into the jungle, desperate to escape. But Nathan didn't grant him the chance. Hidden in the canopy, Nathan tracked him silently, moving faster than Fallon's frantic attempts at evading him. The end came swiftly. A single shot cracked through the fog, piercing the base of Fallon's skull. The hunter collapsed without a sound, his life extinguished in an instant. Nathan descended from his perch, staring at the body with cold detachment. He adjusted his rifle scope and disappeared once more into the mist. Derek and the remaining stalkers listened helplessly to Fallon's final moments over their comms. His strangled screams were cut short, followed by an eerie silence. Nathan's voice crackled again in their earpieces, calm and emotionless. "Two down. Do you still think you're the hunters?" Derek clenched his claws into fists, his confidence visibly shaken. Though his arrogance persisted, a darker realization settled over him: they were fighting an enemy who ruled the battlefield in every possible way. For the first time, the galactic stalkers truly felt fear. Derek growled in frustration as the jungle's fog thickened around him. Sweat slicked his scaled skin, and his once proud posture now bore the weight of fear and exhaustion. Only two of his squad mates remained, their once powerful strides reduced to cautious steps. They were no longer hunters, only prey fleeing from an enemy they could not see. Desperation gnawed at his pride. "We're retreating. Higher ground, now!" Derek barked. If they could reach a vantage point, their superior weaponry and armor might tip the scales. The remaining team followed in silence, their predatory arrogance extinguished by the relentless jungle and its unseen guardian. The dense undergrowth snapped beneath their boots, every sound amplified in the oppressive stillness. Derek scanned the terrain with piercing eyes, but he could feel Nathan's presence just beyond his sight. Derek had no idea he was walking into a trap. Nathan watched from a concealed position above the trail, hidden in the canopy like a phantom. He had anticipated Derek's plan: higher ground was predictable, and predictability meant weakness. Derek's heavy footsteps echoed through the humid air as Nathan adjusted his rifle. This was no longer merely combat, it was dominance. Below, Derek and his squad mates struggled to force the jungle into submission. Flames erupted as they fired incendiary rounds, setting the undergrowth ablaze and sending towering columns of smoke into the sky. The jungle writhed in response. Animals screeched and scattered, panicked by the fire, transforming the entire forest into a chaotic uproar. But the chaos only played into Nathan's hands. Displaced predators lunged at the stalkers in confusion and rage. One of Derek's men barely raised his rifle before he was tackled by a creature with razor-sharp mandibles. He screamed once, the sound abruptly silenced by a gurgling choke. The other hunter, disoriented and firing wildly, fell to a stalking feline, its glowing eyes cutting through the smoke as it dragged the alien's body into the shadows. Derek sprinted, his every step driven by rage and frustration. "Show yourself, coward," he bellowed into the dense fog, slamming his weapon against a tree in fury. "You hide behind this jungle like a weakling." Derek's breath came in ragged gasps as the flames dwindled. Smoke clung to him, swirling around his figure as the oppressive silence returned. And then, the voice. Nathan's voice. Cold, steady, unyielding. "This isn't a hunt. This is a reckoning." Derek froze, his instincts screaming danger. In a blur of motion, he spun and fired wildly into the trees, but his shots hit nothing. The jungle seemed to close in on him as shadows shifted and Nathan's voice echoed again. You never stood a chance. Finally, Derek saw movement. His blood surged with fury as he charged, discarding any strategy. The trees parted, and he spotted Nathan for the first time, a lone human, calm and determined amidst the chaos. Derek swung his massive clawed fist, expecting to crush the smaller being, but Nathan rolled away with practiced precision, vanishing into the smoke like an apparition. Another movement, and Derek struck again, only to meet thin air. This isn't a fight. This is survival. Nathan's voice rang through the mist. Derek's patience shattered. He activated his energy shield, trying to flush Nathan out with a blast of force. But the human had already moved, reappearing just beyond the shield's range. Every swing Derek made seemed to drain him, his confidence crumbling with each wasted effort. Then, the fatal mistake. Derek charged blindly, swinging wide and exposing his back. Nathan's rifle cracked, and Derek staggered as the shot pierced his armor. Falling to one knee, the great hunter looked up in disbelief as Nathan emerged from the shadows, his face set with grim determination. Nathan raised his rifle one final time. The jungle glowed in the firelight behind him, casting him as both shadow and judge. The jungle doesn't mock, Nathan said, his voice cold and final. It buries. The final shot rang out, and Derek collapsed, his enormous form crashing to the ground. Silence reclaimed the jungle. As the fires burned low and the mist began to lift, Nathan stood still, rifle at his side. The battle was over. He looked down at Derek's lifeless body, a faint grimace crossing his features. They thought this world was a game, he murmured. But nature doesn't play. Without another word, Nathan disappeared into the jungle, his figure swallowed by the mist, leaving no trace of his presence. The jungle had claimed its invaders, and the only witness was a phantom. The narrator's voice carried the final words, the hunters came seeking trophies. They left behind only ghosts.